Hey everybody, this is another Coach Goodrich 8th grade American history video. This is going to be part 2 of the Unit 2, so we're going to be focusing more on exploration and colonization of the New World. In this case, we'll be dealing with the later parts of colonization in the New England, Middle, and Southern colonies, and that's where we're going to pick up, so make sure you have your notes on you. Here we go. How do these three types of colonies compare to one another? Well, it is very important to know who belongs to which one. So if we're working from the top down to the bottom, you got Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. You have New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware for the middle. And you have the southern colonies of Maryland, Virginia, North and South Carolina, and Georgia. So if you need to write those down, make notes on your own map, please do so. New England, Middle, and Southern colonies. New England colonies. Here we go. Another better map down here. Fill out your charts with this information. You got short summers, long, harsh winters, rocky soil. This is going to be settled by separatists. Separatists are people seeking religious freedom. They're seeking to separate from the current church, in that case, the Church of England. A lot of them are going to be what we now know as Puritans. Pilgrims are an offshoot of that branch, wanted to purify the church. New England is not the best area for farming. It's a little cold up there, lots of coastline. The soil is pretty rocky, but they do have natural harbors. The ocean is naturally flowing up there as well. They're going to have a good start with the Indians. This is where we get the first Thanksgiving from. But it steadily grows worse over time because of vast religious differences between the natives and the Puritans. Focus on trade, fishing, shipbuilding, and lumber. Puritans, Pilgrims from England, they're going to settle at Plymouth Rock in 1620. So you got separatists. For the middle colonies, warm summers, cold winters, and it was a decent soil. You have a mix of separatists and opportunists for the different types of colonists specifically. You can have many rivers that connect a lot of those regions that allow travel by boat and trade with other colonies and regions. They're going to have the best overall relationship with the Native Americans. They're going to have a lot of trade and commerce between them. They're going to focus on trade, grain mills, and agriculture, and they're going to be the most ethnically diverse of the colonies. You're going to have a lot of different people groups from all over the place, settled by the Dutch and the Quakers. You're going to have Germans, have Scotch-Irish, Italians, French. All of those are going to settle in those regions there, which is probably has some reason to why they get along so well with the Indians, because they understand that people are going to be different, and that doesn't bother them. And then you got the southern colonies. Long hot summers, mild shorter winters, great soil. This land is going to be primarily settled by opportunists. Opportunists are the kind of colonists, they wanted the chance to get rich. They wanted the opportunity to get rich, whether that's through gold or silver, other precious metals, or what they're eventually going to plant and start growing, tobacco. They have abundance of land, huge states, huge territories that led to huge farms and plantations that would grow a lot of crops. They're going to have a very poor relationship with the natives, a lot of open war and conflict. They're going to focus on farming cash crops. Cash crops are typically things that you don't eat, with the exception of rice in this case, but you just sell for profit. Tobacco, rice, cotton, indigo, as you work your way through it. And these are going to be primarily English settlers, and like what we see in Jamestown in 1607. Puritan New England. Let's talk a little bit more about them. What are the Puritans? Church members who wanted to purify or reform the Church of England and then eliminate all traces of Roman Catholicism. Every worshiper in their mindset should experience God directly through faith, prayer, Bible study. Well, it sounds good. And you know what? Things started off good. That's where we get Thanksgiving from. Here you get a good idea of where all these things started with the Plymouth colony here, 1620. Eventually, it all become part of the Massachusetts Bay Colony with the capital at Boston. So John Winthrop, the first governor, wanted to create a model society, a city upon a hill, as it's referenced in the book of Matthew in the Bible. It should be a shining example to everybody that makes people want to convert to Christianity, to follow Christ. Some Puritans wanted to stay in England and reform the church from within. Others left and wanted to escape persecution, to flee to America. This is where we get the term separatist from, wanting to separate. In 1620, the Pilgrims find their home, Plymouth Colony, which would be the second permanent English colony in North America. What's the first? Hopefully you get it right. Thousands more fled to America, and Winthrop and other Pilgrims would establish the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the port of Boston, eventually Plymouth, and the Pilgrims would be incorporated into the Massachusetts Bay Colony. However, things, like so often, never stay very good for long. A prominent church leader, Roger Williams, is quoted as saying, "Forced religion stinks in the nostrils of God," speaking specifically on holding fast to tradition when it may drive some other people away. Also with the forced conversion of Native Americans. If you don't give somebody a choice, they really can't become what they're supposed to be. I think that's been echoed enough through the Bible that we should know that. You can't force somebody to believe something that they won't. Felt that every person should be free to worship according to their own conscience. He was arrested and was going to be sent back to England, but he escaped and fled and established a colony of Rhode Island, which is just south. More division. Another prominent church leader, even though they tried to keep her from being that way, was a woman named Anne Hutchinson. She is quoted as saying, "The Holy Spirit enlightens the heart of every true believer," and that worshipers needed neither the church nor its ministers to interpret the Bible for them. She is eventually driven out to Rhode Island as well by the Puritan leaders, but she remains a shining example of someone who could not help but express what her opinions in her God told her to do. Eventually, the natives get a little tired of all of these white people showing up. So Metacom, also known as Metacomet, and King Philip began to organize open rebellions and fighting against the white settlers in the New England region. In spring of 1675, what is now known as King Philip's War begins. The Native Americans would use hit and run or guerrilla warfare tactics where they would spring up in small groups out of the brush, out of the woods, fire off a couple shots, kill a couple people, and then sprint back into the woods and disappear like they'd never been there before. And they would do that sporadically to harass the larger and better equipped armies of the Puritans and eventually the English soldiers. And they would destroy outlying settlements in the region and break up trade routes. This is important. Guerrilla warfare, remember that term, because we're going to talk a lot about that when we get to the American Revolution. For over a year, both sides waged war against each other. Finally, food shortages, disease, and heavy casualties wore down the Native Americans' resistance, and they surrendered or fled. Metacom was executed, and his head was on display for over 20 years as a warning to people who would resist. Pennsylvania. Who's going to be given the Pennsylvania Charter? And who did that guy bring to Pennsylvania, and for what group of people? That is William Penn, which is where we get the name Pennsylvania from, and he is going to get the charter for the Quakers, his own religious group that he was a part of. That's where I get Quaker oatmeal from. Quakers actually translates, or they were called Quakers because the Holy Spirit would come upon them, and they were supposed to shake and kind of convulse around as they were speaking in tongues and whatnot. But they were just a different religious group, same Christian group, but a little bit different in their beliefs. William Penn believed God's inner light burned inside everyone. Anybody could speak at services. You didn't need to have ministers. They dressed plainly. They were pacifists. They opposed all war. Anglicans, which are people who go to the Church of England, and Puritans did not get along with them very well. So William Penn needed a new home for his Quaker followers, and Pennsylvania ended up becoming just that, a safe haven, a utopia for them. And they had great relationships with the Native Americans. Penn's plan for government called for a representative assembly. Representative assembly is what we have today, partially, is where you pick people that you want to represent you and you vote for them in order to get them elected to office. The Quakers got along well with the Native Americans because of Penn's beliefs and the freedom of religion. Equality, cooperation, religious tolerance were all qualities of life in Quaker Pennsylvania. This would greatly influence America. And then they established Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Philadelphia means the city of brotherly love. And Philadelphia would be a capital of the United States for a while. Finally, we'll get into one of the next great colonies, originally called New Netherlands. While the English set up colonies along the Atlantic coast, the Dutch finally managed to settle one area in America. 1621, the Dutch would settle what was then called New Netherland along the Hudson River. The Dutch were less worried about conquering Native Americans and more worried about trading with them, especially for furs, which were worth quite a bit in the Netherlands and the rest of Europe. The Dutch are soon going to be driven out by the English, led by the Duke of York. So we now call the place New York after him, and New Amsterdam, their capital city, became New York City, NYC. The south of New York, the English renamed it New Jersey, after the Duke, I believe, of Jersey, who accompanied the Duke of York in the battle. Mini quiz. Alright guys, this will be up online for you, so you can answer the questions here, and then definitely answer the questions online for your grade. You can go back through the notes, go back through the videos, see what you have learned and what you are missing. And I look forward to discussing this with you when I see you guys next. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys soon. Oh, don't forget, you can do it.